Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video we are going to continue our look at painting the Primaris Outrider from the Indomitus 40K box set. In this video we are going to work on creating dirty wheels, as well as a little bit of dust and, a little bit of dirt and grime along the bottom of the bike. To get us started, we're going to use some Abaddon Black, Mournfang Brown. We are going to mix these in roughly a 1-to-2, 1 black to 2 brown. We're going to add about 3 or 4 drops of medium, and I'm going to also add a bit of Liquitex Flow Aid to that mixture, with a little generous helping of water to help thin the color even further. We are going to begin applying this essentially a wash onto the entirety of the wheel. Basically everything that is imagined to be the rubber of the wheel. So we're allowing it to build into the little recesses, the little nooks and crannies inside the detail of the tread of the tire, I should say, as well as where the tire meets the metal rim. I'm also allowing some of the color to build up in that space too, because oftentimes dirt does build in those areas. If you get any on any of the black areas or even the silver areas, not a huge issue. If you really want to keep those nice and neat, you can always come back and clean those up. Of course, allowing the color to kind of fall over onto other areas helps establish essentially that dirty, grimy feeling. And of course, you applying this fairly generously over the surface, but if you find that it's pooled up a little too heavily, just simply wipe your brush off and of course draw the excess out through the bristles. The brush I'm using here is a medium shade brush, or is it a large shade brush? No, it's a medium shade brush, or the wash brush. And of course, I'm also just being somewhat haphazardly, but I'm just applying this along the bottom portion of the bike, as well as under the feet, where the where those little foot pads are, his little feet rests. I don't know if those are supposed to be anything other than a foot pad, but either way. Again, the whole vibe with this is that there is a little bit of dirt and grime. Now, mind you, we have not really completed our entire vibe for the bike itself, as I have not gone into any other details, especially on the rider himself. So we may go back and forth as we work our way through this model. Baneblade Brown is next. I'm adding it into the mixture, so it's basically a 1 black, 2 Mournfang Brown, and 1 Baneblade Brown, but actually it's probably more, if it was proper ratios, it's actually more Baneblade Brown than it is that previous mixture. And of course I add a little bit more medium, and as you can see here, I'm applying it somewhat generously, but then I quickly draw the excess out, as I don't want the color to build up too heavily. I still want a lot of that black to show through these wash layers. This is an opaque color, and it will block colors underneath. As you can see, we apply it fairly heavily there, but then of course I'm going to wipe the brush off and then draw that excess out so that it's not applied too heavily. And of course it gives you a really kind of grimy kind of look, especially if you keep your brush stroke sort of haphazardly as you work your way around the surface. I'm trying to keep it mostly within the tread area. I'm not going too close to the rim. Not yet anyway, and you can see it's just simply working it in. I'm trying to work as complete as possible and getting into all these little nooks and crannies. I'm just doing just underneath the bike, as well as under the foot pads, and of course also the that little space underneath the rider. There's no color there, and so in fact I will apply shade washes to those areas as well. Next, we're going to take Baneblade Brown all on its lonesome. We're going to add some medium and, of course, a drop of Liquitex Flow Aid to this. I'm also going to use a fairly generous amount of water, and I'm going to apply this over the entirety of the tire area, or the wheel. Not the metal areas, of course, but just simply the what is imagined to be the rubber itself. I'm also allowing the color to sit in that space between the wheel and the rim as well, so that it looks like dirt accrued into those spaces. Otherwise, we're simply just working our way through these areas. And again, if I do apply a little too much color onto an area, I just simply clean the brush off and draw the excess out, leaving that really kind of light tone in those areas. It is kind of tricky to get in underneath the wheels towards the back of the bike. And because the model really is not glued to the base, I suppose I could have simply took the model off the base and got to these little areas without, most likely hitting other parts of the model that have already been finished, essentially, such as the exhaust pipes and things of that nature. But again, I'm not too worried about it, as we're not building this up to a very high standard. We're going to build this to simply a good tabletop standard. And also, this is really just to kind of encourage some of you out there who are, looking at your vehicles and your bikes and, for whatever game system really, and you want to, build up this kind of effect on the bikes and create this sort of dusty kind of look. This is really more of like, it's old dirt, it's dried dust, and, it's not like super muddy or anything like that. It's more of an earthier kind of thing going on here. Terminus Stone from Citadel Dry is next. We're going to use a large dry brush for this, although I probably could have just simply used a medium dry brush. But after dunking it into the pot of paint, I simply wipe the brush off onto an old t-shirt to draw the excess amount of pigment out of the bristles, pretty much so that I'm looking to get rid of like 80 to 90% of the pigment that was on the bristles, so it's just a light dusting. Now, because of the size of the brush and because some of the brush stroke I use as I'm working here was actually quite heavy, I do kick up quite a bit of dust, and you will see that the model will have a light little dusting on it afterwards, just because of, the nature of, moving these pigments around and creating a little cloud of pigment as we work. But yeah, when you are dry brushing, you want to make sure that just the bristles, the tips of the bristles are making contact with your model surface, and that if you can feel the model moving in your hand, you are dry brushing too hard. So these are key factors to bear in mind when you are dry brushing. A lot of times, a lot of people just simply hit the model with a whack ton of paint, and it ends up looking super chalky. Now, I'm not too worried about the chalky look on this model as it is right now, because again, we're creating this kind of dusty like appearance. But I will come back in with our previous mixture of the black to Mornfang to Baneblade, and I will use a little bit of that thinned out with a little bit more water, and then simply will apply a light little layer onto the tire here, and that is just to knock back some of that really bright Terminus Stone color that was being applied, and this is just to knock that back, re-saturate the areas. And again, I really want the dark of the black of the wheel, but again, we just have this light little layering of dirt built up onto the wheels, and that really is kind of a subtle way of building this up without having to use any kind of pigments or any other special kind of products that excel at these kind of techniques. This is something that you simply can just use whatever colors you happen to have on hand, and you can produce these kinds of effects, and it's really, really easy. It just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, and of course, when I am working on these many layers that I've done here, I've waited until the layers were dry before moving into another color. So as you can see, here is our finished effect, and it's it's pretty convincing, right? I mean, it looks like dirty, dusty tires, and of course we got a little bit of dirt and grime built up along the bottom of the bike. But this was part 3 in our look at the Primaris Outrider from Indomitus 40K. A big thank you to all my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below, and you'll be taken to Patreon, where there's varying tiers of support, and a huge thank you to everybody who does. Take care of those brushes, and they will take care of you.